You're listening to Menopause Natural Solutions, Episode 21, Hair Loss in Menopause. Welcome to Menopause Natural Solutions, your podcast for all things perimenopause and menopause related. Stay tuned as naturopath Jennifer Harrington explains how to use natural therapies to transform your health and happiness. Hello ladies, and welcome back to another edition of Menopause Natural Solutions. Today I'm talking about a topic that is probably going to affect 50% of you, as roughly 50% of women will experience some form of hair loss. And hair loss is often accompanied by additional stress, anxiety and depression for the women involved. And this is unfortunately a catch-22, as feeling stressed out is another possible reason for hair loss, and it can exacerbate the problem. Hair loss is also linked with lower self-esteem, a negative body image and self-isolation. So you can see that it's a really important topic to discuss today. But I want to start by saying if you're in this vicious cycle of hair loss and depression and stress, I want you to please consider going and talking to a coach, a counsellor or a psychologist. And here's a couple of other tips that some women have found helpful. Changing their shampoo or conditioner to being a chemical-free version. Reducing the overall frequency of washing, brushing and styling, especially the use of hair dryers, hair straighteners or other devices that use heat. And it goes without saying that wet hair should not be brushed, but it can be combed. Other women have found scalp massage to be beneficial, especially the stimulation of acupressure points or even acupuncture. I love having oil treatments. So a combination of oil treatment with a massage is really, really nice. But you really want to work on oil treatments for not just the hair, but for the scalp as well. Certain yoga asanas, which are also yoga positions, may be beneficial in promoting good blood flow to your head and nourishing and reducing hair loss. In women, pattern hair loss is different to men. So it's most commonly characterized by excessive hair thinning and slow hair regrowth. And it normally starts in the mid-front hairline or in your hair part. And what we find is the part starts to widen and there's general hair thinning all over. And this is very different from male pattern hair loss, which tends to start at the front and recede backwards. And the most probable cause for hair loss around menopause is hormonal change. And hormonal change can also cause hair to start growing in new areas, such as your chin or your face or your chest. Now, the hormones related to hair changes include estrogen, progesterone and testosterone, especially the dihydrotestosterone form. Now, other potential causes of hair loss can be thyroid dysfunction. Now, with thyroid dysfunction, you often also see the thinning of the outer third of the eyebrow. So that can be a little hint if you weren't suspecting thyroid dysfunction and you're losing your eyebrow, then go and get it tested. Parathyroid dysfunction, autoimmune conditions. Now with autoimmune conditions, women may also notice thinning in the underarm hair and also thinning in the genital hair. So it's thinning of hair all over. Diabetes can cause hair loss. Digestive dysfunction, dietary changes such as excessive fasting or protein deficiency, and even gluten intolerance can cause hair loss. We mentioned stress before, genetics. Unfortunately, there's a big link with genetics and hair loss. Cardiovascular disease, chronic inflammation, certain infections like syphilis, but again, this looks different to the traditional hair thinning, and it looks more like a patchy hair loss. So if it's not sort of thinning spread throughout your hair, or it's more just clumps and patches, it's worth going to your doctor to get a sample taken just to make sure it's not an infection causing your hair loss. Nutritional deficiencies. Now, these nutrients include vitamin A, the B complex, vitamin D, zinc, silica, selenium, iron, iodine, and essential fatty acids. Smokers tend to have a bigger issue with hair thinning than non-smokers. There's also a link with excessive ultraviolet light. So if you're someone that works under ultraviolet light for many hours in a day, this could also be a potential problem for you. Toxic exposure, such as heavy metals, and also certain medications. So if you've started a new medication and your hair loss started after that point, it's worth going back to your GP to discuss if it can be linked with the medication, and if it can be, is there another alternative that you can take instead that isn't going to have the same effect? With hair loss, I consider testing sometimes. I might test certain hormonal levels to see if that is a contributor to the hair loss. Sometimes I do a saliva test, a cortisol saliva test, where I check 4 times during the day just to see what's happening, because cortisol should peak around 7:30 in the morning, and then there should be a steep drop and then a slower drop until it plummets out at night, where actually your melatonin should take over then and you should get a good night's sleep. I'll look at thyroid testing if I can see that there's also hair loss with the eyebrow. We can look at parathyroid testing. We can look at a full blood count, including iron and ferritin levels. You can check your zinc, your vitamin D. ANA is a blood test that looks at about 180 different autoimmune conditions. So if you do have that hair loss also under your arms or in your genitals, or maybe even on your arms and your legs, but with your legs, just make sure it's not on your sock line, because quite often you see this in men, that they have no ankle hair, and that's from the rubbing of their socks. I'll also have a look at ESR and CRP, which are inflammation markers. We'll rule out diabetes by looking at things like glucose and insulin, having your blood pressure checked to make sure it's not linked in with cardiovascular disease, your cholesterol, and finally I might look at a HTMA, which is a hair tissue mineral analysis, just to check that there isn't any heavy metal contamination that is possibly the cause of your hair loss. Now, when we're looking at treatment strategies for hair loss, I've gone through a lot of the lifestyle ones already, like the oil treatments and the massage and the yoga positions, acupuncture or acupressure points with your massage. But I sometimes also look at herbs and nutrients. So it really depends what has come up in the testing and in our evaluation to see what ones I would consider. So if it's linked with high testosterone levels, you will often see that extra hair around the face, and areas that you don't want it and areas that you do want it, it tends to disappear from. And this is very frustrating, but it's generally linked with testosterone. And here I would consider herbal combinations of things like peonia and licorice. When we're looking at testosterone, if it's more the dihydro, the DHT form of testosterone, saw pimento is a really good herb to use to block that form of testosterone binding to receptors. Cod liver oil is a really good source of vitamin A, vitamin D, and essential fatty acids. Silica is a building block for new hair, so quite often I will put some of that in there. NAC can help to balance hormones and reduce hair loss. I'd consider iron if it was found to be low in testing, but in menopause, we often find that iron is high in testing. So this is one where I would never supplement unless I could see that it was relevant. Zinc, and I quite often find that zinc is low this time of life, so I don't hesitate to throw in a zinc supplement. Thyroid support if needed. I'd potentially consider withania if your cortisol levels were high. We might need to look at blood sugar support if there's pre-diabetes or diabetes going on. And with this, I might consider chromium or inositol. B vitamins. The B vitamins that are specifically helpful with hair are biotin, niacin, B6, B12 and choline. So be looking for a complex that has really high amounts of those nutrients. And biotin is actually often used in isolation for issues with hair thinning. And I would also consider probiotics, in particular the Saccharomyces boulardii strain or even the Lactobacillus rootii strain. There's research regarding those with hair health. So I hope you have found that interesting. It's a short and sweet episode today. But when thinking about topics that I haven't gone over yet on the podcast, hair loss is something that quite often comes up time and time again. So I thought it was definitely worth taking the time out and doing a bit of research for you and coming up with some possible answers and possible treatment strategies. Even if it is just a really nice oil treatment and massage. Sounds fabulous. I want to go and get a scalp massage myself at the moment. I quite like the traditional Indian head massages. They are really good. Well, I hope you're having a fabulous week wherever you are. I have a quick favour to ask, and that is if you have been enjoying these episodes and you would like to hear more of them, please consider giving the podcast a rating and also leaving me a review, because that helps the podcast servers realize that this is a podcast worth listening to, and it then shows it to other people that are looking for menopause-related podcasts. So that's it for me today. Have a wonderful week wherever you are, and I look forward to touching base again then. Bye. Listening to Menopause Natural Solutions. This podcast contains general information about menopause. It is provided as a guide and is not intended to replace medical advice.